warm welcome from my side. Good day, everyone, and welcome to our expert exchange series. This is the 15th edition of our round within our IKI JET project, where we discuss on various topics about just energy transitions in core regions. Today, I'm very happy to talk about just transition policy frameworks. It's a topic we at the Wuppertal Institute and me personally working on for a longer time. And also over the last years within our project, we were working on various parts that are relating to just transition. And there are a lot of new lessons learned, a lot of things that has happened over the last years, not always something and politically also in the way that we were hoping. So the ambition sometimes is lacking. There are gaps, and there are probably also progress could be faster. But nevertheless, yeah, we have learned a lot. So we want to take this opportunity today to also exchange these learnings among each other. I'm very happy that we have a panel today from participants from 3 countries who will also share a bit their insights and the situation of our just transition frameworks in their countries. So just want to walk you through the agenda very quickly, have a little bit of welcome. Then I am very thrilled to present you our update of the Just Transition Toolbox for core regions, which are one of our flagships products that, yes, we just have updated to the latest knowledge. And then we will have a panel discussions with some presentation of our panelists from Mongolia, Indonesia, and South Africa, discussing then a bit our lessons learned, our insights about just transition framework processes in the respective countries. But we also really would like to give you the opportunity to share your lessons, to ask questions. So I will already like to welcome you to use the chat function in the meeting. Whenever you have a question, feel free to text it there. Otherwise, we will have the opportunity at a later stage for you also to come in and ask your question in the open discussion. So with this, I just would like to just briefly share you our speakers today. So there is me, Jannis Beutel, researcher at the Wuppertal Institute in Berlin. I'm moderating today together with my colleague Johannes Lohmeier from GIZ, who's taking on the technical aspects and give you a short introduction about the project in a bit. And then we have our 3 panelists, which I will come back to introduce later, but so you have already seen who will give the inputs today. So with this, I'm handing over to Johannes for the introduction of our project.
Thank you very much, Jannis. I hope you can hear me well. Otherwise, give me a sign. Good morning from Bonn, Germany. As Jannis said, this expert exchange series is part of the IKI JET project. And to give you a bit of context what this project is about, we can go to the next slide and just briefly want to introduce this project. The IKI JET project, or a bit longer, is the Innovation Regions for a Just Energy Transition project. Is a project that is commissioned by the International Climate Initiative, IKI, of the German Federal Ministry of Environment and Climate Action, or BMUKN, co-financed by the European Commission. The objective of this program is to support and accelerate just energy transitions away from coal to renewable energy and other sustainable economic activities in the global south. We have 7 countries and focus with in-depth support in Indonesia and Colombia. Other countries are Thailand, Mongolia, Vietnam, Chile, and that's the 7 countries, and South Africa, of course. And country number 8 and shortly will be Kazakhstan. It's not only a GIZ project, it's also Wuppertal Institute. That's why Yannis is presenting or coordinating this meeting today. And apart from both of our organizations, the project consortium is complemented by the Climate Action Network, the International Institute for Sustainable Development, the ILO, Solidarity Center, and Union Abroad, a feeder. The project will run for 1 more year, and the expert exchange series will continue with further expert exchanges in the next weeks, so stay tuned. I will also post the links in the chat. And now I give the word back to Yannis and to wish you a great event, and please be active in the chat.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Johannes, for the introduction. And now to kind of set the scene, I would like to introduce you the update from our toolbox to also, which I believe is like a great way if you want to like really look into several aspects of just transition planning and framework development. This is like what we kind of compiled to from several projects where we are working on just transition and core regions around the globe, where we put in like the knowledge from the last years to really to give an overview about like everything that we find relevant in that regard. There's we really need to try to like limit us to like not write too much. Nevertheless, this become almost to like 200 pages long. So it is nothing to read like in one bit, but more about like dive into the sections that you are interested in to learn more about. And we have already published a first version of this in 2022. So quite some time ago. And now we took the last year to update it to the latest stage of knowledge. So there are some like really detailed things that we changed, like updated all the numbers, but also we added a lot of new sections and details about like projects that were coming in the last years, and also examples that we wanted to highlight from recent processes. So to give you an overview about the topics of support, we structured the toolbox into these sub-chapters. We wrote a dedicated new one about like repurposing of coal mines, as this was really something that is still very important for a lot of the countries that are having coal or phasing out of coal. There we also provided a lot of info about like what could you do with the mine, what other countries have done so far in terms of repurposing, but also how to finance this, as this is something very important and often like left to the communities or countries if not planned ahead. And the second one is about economy, something that is like, we always wondered like why we haven't included it in the first place already, while writing, as of course economic diversification in these regions, economic development, finding new sectors and work for the people in the regions is crucially important. So this one we also provided a bit more in this regard, a bit more theoretical overview also about like what we believe should be in there, but also more practical guidance on what could be possible instruments, possible policies to support economic development in core regions, and what are also the key major emergent sectors from a green economy that might be relevant for a lot of the countries working in there. So I cannot provide like too much details here, but I would invite you to take a look into the toolbox to see yourself. So the type of guidance we provide there is like really like information, try to like write up what is out there and like summarize it to give you like a good overview, have examples and case studies in there as well, and then support this with references to further readings and other sources. If you want to dive a bit deeper into the topic, you can do that there. And now a bit back to the topic of this expert exchange, because of course we also provided information and our thoughts about just transition framework processes, like what are our lessons learned in that regard. And there we really draw from the experiences over the last years in the partner countries in our projects, but also from the European context where we are working on as well as the Wuppertal Institute. And a few of these lessons learned I just want to present to also inspire probably you to share yours, and also to set the scene a bit for this discussion. So the first one, and this is something that gladly is taken up by many countries, but not all of them, is on a governance coordination mechanism. This is often what we see the moment when this is introduced in some way, that then the just transition really starts to like get going. So if there is like only one ministry, for example, responsible for just transition in some way, often in also connected to energy transition, then this will be a silo and only touches on energy aspects. But at some point, usually the political landscape realizes, oh, we need to coordinate this actually across all ministries, and not only vertical, but also horizontally to the lower levels of governance. And we need, because it's so complex, we need to find a way to like coordinate among the different branches of government. And this is something that I think is like very crucial. Nevertheless, like how you actually do it, there are lots of examples on how to institutionalize. It could be like within a government or like an agency, a development agency. But this is something that I think is like very crucial to get a kickstart on just transition implementation. The second one, and this has also become very clear in the work during the IKI JET project, is that countries also would need to improve data availability and the quality of data. Because if you think about it, you set up policies and you want to like drive certain sectors. What we have seen in many regions was that often the data on like still quite like basic indicators, we couldn't even track those. So if you want to advance, for example, the like find jobs for people in mining, often the problem was already that there was not a good overview about how many people actually work in the mines, what kind of people are working in these mines, are they willing to stay in their region or not? So, and to be able to actually find out during the process when you implement the policies, are they working or not, you need to have some kind of measurement. And of course, you can do this like targeted for this policy and say, okay, we introduce also a measuring mechanism to track the progress of a specific policy. But it is often way easier when this is already somehow in place. So I believe also that investing into data gathering and some like panel data that you track over a period of time would be like very effective to make just transition implementation also more effective. A third aspect I want to say, and this is also a learning from our European regions, is that a spatial perspective to just transition can be very helpful, because we realize often what we are debating in just transition is a coordination between competing targets. So we have several targets or objectives we want to fulfill, but we have limited amount of space for doing so. And that's especially crucial in more urban areas, where you have often then competing interests for land, and then applying this in a kind of spatial strategy, or just having a spatial perspective in strategies, can really help to say, okay, if we only have this limited amount of space, if we want to put solar, if we want to put industry, if we want to have space for affordable housing as well, then we need to also not only decide that we're gonna have it, but we also need to decide where we're gonna have it. And then it helps to kind of negotiate this process if you have that spatial strategy as well. And fourth, and this is the last one I want to share for now, is of course, we also always talk about financing of projects, and this is often a bottleneck where the regions and countries say, oh, we don't have the financial means to invest into just transition, and especially the justice aspects often fall short. Here we often see that what has been done so far was often based on grants, which of course can work very well, but a bit underexplored were the possibilities to also change the fiscal framework conditions and other ways that are not grants, but like other incentives to actually make projects work. So, and this is, for example, I know it's in Indonesia, it's the way for renewables. It's really hard to make them bankable at the moment. And it's not, and of course people say, oh, grant would be a possibility to do this. But often it could also be just the financial framework that needs to change so that it makes something profitable that is at the under the current framework not. And yeah, that's also something where I feel it should be more explored, but of course politically complicated in many countries. So this is as an introduction. I already almost spoke too long, but this is just a little bit of an inspiration, touches on like many different aspects of just transition, but also what we feel would be like ways to like really improve the processes if these things would be taken into account. Yeah, and now I would be very happy to hear from our panelists about the situation in their country. And happy to discuss this afterwards. So again, I would like to invite you to ask any questions or comments in the chat, or like make yourself a note and come back, come in, yeah, and like talk with us at a later point in the discussion. So first of all, I would like to ask our colleague from Indonesia to come in and to yeah, share her thoughts. So Agis is working at the Dala Institute, a research institute in Indonesia, and she has also been involved in developing a framework, a just transition framework, on which what I believe is now more focusing on the energy sector. And she has a lot of insights from this process already, and she would like to share first, yes, what the situation in Indonesia is, and what are the learnings from her region. And yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Janice, for having me in this panel discussion. Is an honor for me to contribute to this discussion. So, my name is Balgis Inaya, but you can call me Agis, everyone. I am a researcher and also an evaluator at the Dala Institute. Dala is a institution that works on the research, evaluations, also technical assistance in the nexus of social, environment, and also economy. And we do have several projects that we are working together with Wuppertal. And one of them is the IKI JET. So we are helping GIZ to develop the just energy transition framework for Indonesia, working together with the Bappenas, the National Development Planning Agency. So maybe just next slide, please. Can you? Okay, thank you. So I will start my presentations with sharing with you the progress of just transition. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that this is a historical just transition milestones globally. So it starts in I believe it's 1970. So the discussions of just transition emerged in that year, focusing on the labor actually. But I want to focus on when Indonesia started to involve in this discussion. So in 2018, Indonesia signed the Silesia Declaration, demonstrating its commitment to a just and equitable transition. And then fast forward to 2022 to 2024, there have been milestones from the policy development. Actually, there are Indonesia Low Carbon Development Initiatives, also updated NDC 2021, and I forgot to also put one policy in there. So it's the long-term strategy, low carbon and climate resilience. So it's in short is LTS LCCR. So these are the policies that have just transition principles identified as a cross-cutting approach, but it's not like very focusing on just transition approach as a whole, but it's just acknowledge that just transition is important to be addressed. And then in 2022 we have JET-P coming, and in 2023 the JET-P Secretariat launched a comprehensive investment and policy plan, or CIPP document. So basically it's currently a document that has become kind of reference, like main reference when we talk about just transition standards. And in 2024 to 2025, it is actually the period of development of national development plan. So it's a regular development plan, updated every 5 years, following the presidential election. So in the current RPJMN, it's showing like the principle of just transitions very clearly, but it's still very like scattered. It's very separated because it's focusing more on the sectoral development. And as Janice mentioned before, that at the moment in Indonesia, we are focusing more on the energy transition when we talk about just transition, and with strong implementation in power sector. So here, RUPTL, or New Electricity Supply Business Plan, is also becoming a key policy anchor when we talk about the just energy transition in Indonesia. So it shows like the technical aspect of energy transition actually, and it led by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources and PLN, the state-owned electricity company. And also we have the second NDC updated in 2025. And in the 2025 to 2026, I think Bappenas also just launched a Green Jobs Roadmap nationally, and but I believe it's not being disseminated like well to all subnational level, but it's already there. So at least this can be an entry point when we talk about the workforce in just transition. And then about the national just energy transition framework development. So this is the project that we are currently doing with GIZ and also with the Wuppertal, helping the Bappenas to develop this. And then from 2026 onwards, we are expecting that this framework could be finalized and also institutionalized and implemented both at the national and also subnational level. And we continue to the next slide, please. Yeah. So for these slides, actually, this is the lessons learned, and some of the lessons learned have been actually mentioned. Like it's kind of similar with what Wuppertal has found for the lessons learned as well. But I would like to kind of point out about the current governance process in Indonesia. So how about the policy formulation process? So it's basically very highly centralized. So it's generally central government-led, but increasingly multi-stakeholders. Where Bappenas coordinating national development planning with other ministries and other sectoral ministries, and the sectoral ministries, they are leading the technical policies areas. And as you can see here at the bottom here is the relevant regulatory frameworks that are currently available in Indonesia. I put them in three categories. So the first one is more related to climate and also just transition. And also there is one focusing more on the energy transition, and then about the planning and implementation. But ideally, this all of these policies should be complementing each other for the implementation of just transition in Indonesia. And I also want to point out that in recent years, donor supported technical assistance becomes like a major player here. So it has a major role to play in accelerating policy formulation because of, like Janice has mentioned before, because of the limitations on the budget and fiscal. So they don't really invest in, regulating the just transition. So at the moment, we don't really have like a unified national framework for just transition. But at the moment, we are we can use the RPJMN because it's already being developed, that has just transition principles in there. It's just that it needs to be translated into regional planning for the implementation of just transition. And that also relates to the budget kind of plan, since if the programs are being mentioned in the RPJMN and also in the RPJMD, the regional development planning, and then it will be easy for the government to just have the budget for the just transition. But at the moment, it's not there yet. So it's also become one of the challenge. And the other things that I think is also working in Indonesia is the cross-ministerial coordination and also task force approach. Although it is still very focusing on the energy transition, like the technical aspects, but the multi-stakeholder forum are being emerged. In Indonesia, we do have a task force for energy transition. It was led by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, but sadly it's not involving like the sectoral ministries that are working on the areas of just transition, for example, workforce or social ministries or women empowerment ministry. So it's very focusing on the energy transition for the technical aspects. And we now have the JET CIPP I think it's already a good start in Indonesia, because it's become an entry point for more discussion, like further discussions on how to really integrate social and economic aspects into the energy transition planning in Indonesia, both at the national and also at the subnational level. And I think I already mentioned before about the increasing involvement of development partners and financing institutions is very important, since at the moment the governance of Indonesia, they are focusing more on grants to plan or implement the just transition project, because at the moment when we talk about just transition, it's only in the project level or program level, but it's not being like embedded into government regulations about at the nationals and also this the subnational level. And that also leads me to the key challenges. The governance of just transition still remain fragmented across sectors, because they see that energy transition is still being treated as a technical issue. So it's still very silo when we talk about, even though there have been like lots of multi-stakeholder dialogues kind of stuff, but actually when we see on the ground, it's still very lacking. Particularly when we go to the subnational level, it is very, very fragmented. Sometimes the workforce agency, they don't care about the energy agency planning about the energy transition. So it's the role of development agencies and also donors to kind of convene all the stakeholders together and try to raise awareness that this just transition is actually multi-sectoral kind of issues, not just energy issues. So, and also the subnational governments, they have limited authorities and resources. So, because currently it's all centralized to the national government. And when we talk about just transition, we very, very lack of public meaningful participations. Like, okay, at the national level, sometimes multi-stakeholders dialogues, they are going well, but when we go to the provinces or cities or agencies, it is shown that the public participations are very lacking. So it's still a big homework for Indonesia to address. And also gap between national ambitions and implementation capacity. Back again to the discourse that the energy transition or just energy transitions often being like discussed at the national level. So it's already like high level discussions at the national level. But when it comes to the implementations or enforcements of like the statements from the government, it's questionable actually. So it's still become like a gap, like big gap here in Indonesia about the ambitions and also the implementation capacity. And this also related to policy inconsistency on energy transition planning. And for next steps and key priorities areas, future priorities, maybe because we are focusing on the energy sector. So it's important for the government to accelerate the power sector decarbonization. So here include renewable energy scale up, also grid expansion, gradual coal phase down. And the important one is the institutionalizing the just transitions into regional or national planning. So once it's in the national and regional planning, it will be very easy to kind of make a budget for it. But at the moment, it's still very, very a long way to go. So it's important to integrate GT into sectoral and also regional planning. So it's not just like the whole development planning, but it should be going into the sectoral planning. Because usually, like for example, the RPJMN, the National Development Planning, it is by Bappenas. It's led by Bappenas. But then other sectoral ministries like energy or women empowerment, they need to make their own or strategic planning following the RPJME. So the RPJMN becomes main reference for them to plan their sectoral development. And with their sectoral development planning, they can integrate the GT, just transition principles, if they want to. So yeah, and then strengthening local implementation frameworks, and also developing clearer worker and community transition programs. I think we already have like the green jobs map, so maybe it's important to just accelerate how will be the implementation and operationalizations of the roadmap for the future. And then when we talk about transitions, it will not be far away from the economic diversification. So the government, national and also subnational, should be preparing about the strategies on the economic diversifications, particularly in coal regions, because they will be the regions that are more affected by the transitions. And then improving the MSME and also local industry, and fiscal transition for coal dependent regions. And then the last one will be the inclusive participations and benefit sharing. This is like the social part of just transitions that somehow left behind. So it should be integrated into the planning that government is developing. So focusing on worker participations, community participations, also engagement, GET-C integrations, and also local benefit sharing for renewable energy project. Because at the moment we only have support, like financial support for coal sector. That also include the benefit sharing. So there is a regulation regulating the benefit sharing of coal for regional and also national stakeholders. But for renewable energy, it's not. We don't have the regulation yet. So sometimes the subnational governments, they are asking, if we want to have like renewable energy projects, do we have the benefit sharing of it for their budget? But sadly, it's not, because there is no regulation regulating that. But we hope that in the future there will be regulations that regulating the benefit sharing for renewable energy projects. I think that's all from my side, and I'm happy to discuss further with others and hear from others too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Agis, for this overview about Indonesian just transition process. It is clear that there's a lot going on, and a lot of different policies are in place where it touches on just transition, but it also seems to be still clear that there needs to be still kind of like an overarching coordination and like push to really like ensure also that there is a better coordination and across the policies, so that you can really call it like a just transition framework, and probably also the realization for or on the higher political levels that you would have to have this across the sectors and not only on the energy sector, but surely this is a good first step. We do have a question from the chat about like the current developments on the energy crisis due to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Was that like, if I'm taking this up, is this like a delay? Can the roadmap and the plans be realized under certain conditions, or do you expect a drawback?
Should I answer this now or later on? I assume I can answer that now. Okay. Regarding the status of just transition of coal power plants, it's also like a big challenge here in Indonesia, because well, actually we already have like the regulations, like the presidential regulations number 112 2022, It is regulations that regulating the accelerations of renewable energy plants, and also the coal phase down, actually coal power plants um, retirement kind of stuff. But in the implementations, actually, we still have lots of new coal power plant coming, and then the subsidy to the coal are still there. Subsidies to coal is still there. So it's like a policy inconsistency with the implementations at the moment. If we talk about the regulations, we already have like very, very high level regulations that try to enhance or try to improve the development of just transition, but it's just like in the implementation, both by the major actors like PLN, also Ministry of Energy, it's still like very inconsistent in terms of they enforce the law and also regulations that have been published before. So I think, yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot for this answer. We do have another question just coming in. I would like to answer this though at a later stage, as we also want to have in the insight from the other two countries that we have on the panel today. So next up, there is our colleague Zemek from Mongolia. She has worked for the Independent Research Institute of Mongolia, but currently are at the University of Queensland in Australia, still working on the just transition aspects, but now more from a theoretical level, both like very interesting. We have invited her here also as she was lead author from the Just Transition Framework developed together with UNDP in Mongolia, which happened like last year. And I'm very happy that she's here today to also talk a bit about the current state of Just Transition Framework development in Mongolia and what are the lessons learned on the process from her perspective. So, Temek, the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this speaking series. So, my background is social research in mostly in development sector. So, in last year, I had the opportunity to work as a team member to the afters of Mongolian first, like just energy transition framework document. So today I just wanted to share like my experience and reflection on what's the working on this development of this document as an author. So not like presenting and informing like what's happening in Mongolia as a just energy transition. So I think the just energy transition, the concept, like, and also the broader dialogue was actively started in in my observation in last 2 years in Mongolia. Then for the energy transition, without just the concept like dialogue is started much earlier, and the key of course our governments there, and also the key international actors who supports and also engage in this dialogue is mostly the multilateral and bilateral donor organizations and also financial institutions like ADB, JICA, GIZ, quite active in this energy transition area, and also supports Mongolian government to produce the develop transition planning from more like research and planning perspective. For the just like energy transition, when we talk about more like justice aspect, the UNDP has been the quite a lead actor in this area, just promoting that this transition should be more like just and socially and economically fair aspects. So therefore, especially this just energy transition framework is more like national level framework is initiated by UNDP Mongolia and closely the participation from the Ministry of Energy was also has been like very active in this process. So I think before like talking that just energy transition like jet onwards, I will use the jet word. The jet, I just wanted to like highlight what's the actual Mongolian reality in terms of energy transition. So I think the Mongolia is a bit of like crosswords. So in terms of like global energy transition, the Mongolia is facing two like simultaneous duties. So externally, we are like supplier of minerals for the global energy green transition. And also the domestically, we need to shift from coal-dominated energy system to renewables, under the climate, commitments. So for like long decades, the coal has been our like backbone for our economy and also energy system. So because of our like climate and geographical condition, so the and also the source we rely on is like very carbon intensive context we have. So therefore, the moving from these realities, of course, very complex, looks like very complex, and also need to balance lots of actors' interests, like in an equal way. So that's the very broad, like actual situation, the current country reality. And for the just energy transition framework, as like learning from the other countries who have already developed and progressed in transition in just this like perspective, we our developed framework also put the like milestones and three interconnected milestones towards the more like just transition happening. So I actually just prefer two slides, but based following like our Indonesian colleague, maybe I will just very quickly go through the what's that just energy transition framework. I'm saying more like framework, but I would like to just share a slide very quickly, show what was our actually main findings. Is it okay?
Yes,
Janice, to show? Okay.
perfect.
Yeah, because I was expecting like this is like question by question discussion, but it seems like I should introduce a bit what we did covered in our just energy transition framework in Mongolian context last year. So the document itself, we see its function as a guiding document, not policy framework, actual policy framework. We like see this as a like guiding and also a living document, as we like have to say like learned and see the examples of our like other countries, especially we in our team. Once we started to develop this JET framework, we went through the several examples of the countries, like especially the South Africa, and then Indonesia and Vietnam, Malaysia, and also China, as in consideration to our close big neighbor, and also Kazakhstan in terms of climate and also post-Soviet context. So based on this like these experiences, the JET framework is we like wanted to. It's our like first attempt for Mongolia to have this type of document, which navigate, which help to government navigate how this transition policies should be framed and implemented. So therefore, the framework is like should be like we set a guiding document. So in order to develop that one, we just wanted to understand what our future energy look like, energy system look like, and also what's our policy direction could shape that different futures. So then for following that, then in terms of Mongolian energy policy direction, we of course we are similar to other countries, not outside. It's like very similar, like trying to contribute these climate commitments. So, and also our current NDC that was updated last year. It also put like a little bit aggressive ambition, like emission decrease by 32% by 2030, and also we also under the SDG 7 like clean energy commitments, So under these scenarios, under these policy commitments, we need to move to this energy transition in a more like justice approach. Should follow the just approach. So and therefore this JET framework vision is to Mongolia's like more like tailored to Mongolian context. And also this transition should like guide the country's coal-dependent economic foundation towards more like green-oriented change, in every sector. So then once we developed this framework, we also went through several like principles, like what would be the main anchoring, principle dictate this document, and then we found out that the key like energy justice like tenets, the distributive procedurals and recognition tenets, which was the mainstream principles used in the previous countries and also in this global energy policy making landscape. And then we also, as I said before, like we tried to illustrate, like learn from the other countries' cases and what's their like context and lessons and application to our country's situation. Of course, it's even they are like each country's case is a little bit, of course, different, and also all our studies, like the main, still especially the main most three the most constituent countries are like the countries joined to the JET partnership. So therefore, like their ambition and also status and a target, especially in relation to the financing aspect, is much like forward. But we mostly like in our framework try to focus on like more like conceptual and also the what like issues, what aspects should be like discussed and how we translate this just like concept into generic like policy making landscape and also government governance and coordination mechanism. That was the actual key focus compared with this our other like example countries. So in term for as similar to the other countries, our framework is actually the first we in terms of sectoral wise we heavily focus on electricity and heating sector issues first, and intentionally they leave other economic like heavy industry, transportation, and agriculture and tourism, like which were like other countries' main sectors. So because if you like start by like focusing on every sector, important sectors, then it's like it's first attempt, first pilot practice. We just wanted to the key focus to also very significant sectors. Therefore, started on the electricity generation and production and consumption, and also, but mostly at the household level, and then heating. So on these areas, we set the key, like identified three key policy direction. The first one is the social inclusion and protection measures, especially related with the energy consumption at the household, like more like generic population level. And then second direction was the workforce transition and the skill development. This is mostly connected to the energy and heating sector workers and also coal mining sector. And then third direction was the economic growth, SME development, and regional diversification. This is mostly connected to the coal regions perspective. So these were the key directions. And then also, in order to identify these policy key directions, we did like energy scenario analysis using the LEAP analysis tools. So, and then we did like business as usual scenario and industry 3 aligned scenario and also SDG 7 aligned scenarios. And then in each scenarios, like we try to estimate the required investments, and then the estimation is also helpful to raise discussion among all the stakeholders who mostly related to financing aspect. That this is the like a good starting point to discuss how we manage these needed investments and what's the mix, the combination could be for the investment perspective. And also we in our like energy scenarios, in each 3 different scenarios, like energy tariff like look like increase. So therefore, this also has a big implication to Ministry of Energy, also Energy Regulation Committee, who set the electricity price for the industry and also household level. So in the energy trap, the energy trip and energy price is the very like complicated topic in Mongolia in terms of the long-lasting regulation aspect. So therefore, this is also very highlight, also as a good starting point to discuss the stakeholders, to discuss if you go into the more like these renewable aspects, there are lots of investment needed, and then it's also implication to the energy prices for the households. So and so especially we also try to this each scenario have this Janice, yep.
Yeah, just to yeah, looking a bit at the time. I mean,
yep, sure.
I'm very interested to hear on this, but we can also have yeah, a bit on a discussion about like what comes next in the lab.
Okay.
Last part.
I see. So as like other countries, like national governance and coordination mechanism is very important, as it's still like this capacities need to be like continuously developed. So next steps and partnership, now the Mongolia see as like this framework must develop, beyond like just document, and it should be like become national platform for more like coordinated implementation and action. So therefore, like we in the document, we suggested to have a national like transition committee, and because it's just if it's usually the task force style is like ongoing there. So as like other countries, the dedicated standalone like coordination mechanism is really needed, and also partnership also should be continued to have a capacity building and also collaboration area. And the priority areas is like clean heating, skill development hubs, regional economic diversification is also very important to be like consideration. And then the very important part is like this JET Just Energy Transition Framework is now like more like internationally supported initiative, you know. So therefore, it should be moved toward like nationally embedded, owned like mechanism, which will be led to a Mongolian government is also very important. So that's the reflection and the status I'd like to share from Mongolia as a case. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zemik, for sharing and also spontaneously giving a bit more insights on the policy framework, which I mean, hopefully now can taken up by the political levels as well. What's your impression there? Is it like how much of this you think will find its way into policy? Is the interest there from the political side to do this, or is also under current political situations the timing not so good for this?
So of course, when we have having discussion among the interministerial the dialogue discussion we have, so in the parties of course interested to have this type of, we need to establish these things, but again, like as a democratic country, no, like constant change at the government like political level is happening, like especially in like recent political like situation. So therefore, like this is the change happening is like direction, the ownership, leadership is also changing. You know, the following the change happened. So therefore, because of that, not we just all like parties, the ministries, to agree to have a like dedicated coordination unit under cabinet secretariat should be like established, also keeping institutional memory and all like legacy of the things would be in there, not just because this the framework development was the was next to Minister of Energy, and again they also expressed it shouldn't be only just one energy sectoral mandate. So it should be going to be more like central level as a like example of the cabinet secretariat, or in some countries like president office also has its mandate to manage, coordinate this function, as this transition has a impact and on every single life social like sectors of country, I mean.
Yeah, that's very true, and I hope that it goes into that direction. And also, thanks again for sharing about this perspective from Mongolia. We do have one more speaker also to share the insights from their country, which is Louise Nord, or Norde, I think. I'm not sure if I said it correctly. Sorry. Yeah, you're a former member actually of the Presidential Climate Change Commission in South Africa. So there in your country, there were already more developments happening in that regard as in our other both countries presented right now. So I'm very happy to hear about the processes and your insights from this process on just transition framework developments. And then afterwards, we can have also a bit more time for a discussion among us three and together with the audience on what our lessons or questions are about this. So yeah, please, Louise, come in, and happy to have you.
So thank you for inviting me, and really most fascinating to hear about Mongolia and Indonesia. And many of the challenges are the same. So, I understand our focus today is about translating principles into policy frameworks. I just want to zoom out a little bit from that and talk about, what I think is needed to make an actual transition come about, not just policy about that transition. And for me, I think there are three areas. The one is, how do we in a country and globally create a critical mass in the realm of the narrative, where it becomes the mainstream to believe in a transition, to understand that we need it, that a common cause is created in a country and globally around that. So that is an arena that we have to shift. Then I think the second arena is, this is an economic shift we're talking about. So I was very pleased to see in your toolkit that you've added a section on economy, because I think that's the hardest piece of the puzzle. And I'll speak a bit about that in the South African context. And then the third piece for me is to ensure that there is justice in this transition, because this transition could happen economically and in our mind shifts and not be just. So, in South Africa, for example, everyone is speaking about just transition, even when they don't care about justice, and even when they are not ensuring justice in the process. So, and that third piece for me means you have to build what South Africans call people's power, because, we have a progressive government, so that government does care about developmental outcomes. Business, by its nature, does not care about justice that much, other than as a social license to operate. So the people who are going to ensure that there's justice in the transition is the labor unions and civil society. So we have to build that power. And I think, we might point to a lot of things in South Africa where people think we are, doing things that are good models for other countries to look at, whether it works for you or not. But we are still, embedded. This is a question of political economy, and we are still embedded in a political economy struggle with very strong vested interests. I mean, I think it was Indonesia, you spoke about, your coal regions. Nobody in your coal regions wants to transition. So we have very strong and powerful vested interests who are still pushing back against this. And so I'll give you one example. We've had a carbon tax in place since 2019, because one of the toolkit elements was, the financial, or in Johannes's presentation, you looked at one of the sort of key enabling aspects is the financial mechanisms. So very good. We wanted to internalize the cost of carbon, and our National Treasury said, okay, let's address this through having a carbon tax. And there was enormous pushback against that carbon tax, to the extent that it was delayed. We started talking about it in 2008, and we only really got it in place in 2019. So there was pushback. There was also, then it gets weakened. So yes, okay, there is a carbon tax, but there's 1 million allowances that give exemptions. And the carbon tax works in 5-year periods. The second 5-year period is starting now, this year. And again, those same vested interests you know, stood up and said, oh, actually, we think the carbon tax is destroying the economy, and so we should drop it. So you know, you never have completely won the story. You have to keep maintaining that forward momentum for a transition. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the story of what we've done here. So, you know, those are my three things: create this critical mass to build a common cause, shift the economy, and ensure justice in the process, both in how you wind down the old economy and also how you build the new one. And that it remains a perpetually contested terrain. In South Africa, we have this idea of social partners. It goes back to when we negotiated our democracy here, when we overthrew apartheid. And it's this idea that government, business, labor, and civil society should get around a table and negotiate things together. So that's, you know, quite a sound, the fact that that is common cause in this country is quite a sound basis for building a just transition. So I'll talk a bit about those four social partners as well. So the whole idea of a just transition was brought to South Africa through essentially labor and civil society. Then we were very fortunate that the National Planning Commission was established. And the fortunate piece is that we had Tasneem Essop, who worked at that time for WWF South Africa. She was appointed a commissioner on the Planning Commission. She is now the top director of CAN International, so one of your partners in this IKI project. And she wrote and consulted and, you know, developed a chapter of our national development plan, which is about the just transition and other environmental issues. That document is not so much like I heard in the Indonesian input. I heard that your national development plan really is a plan. Ours is more like a vision. It says this is what's important to plan about. This is what the future should look like. This is what to focus on. So anyway, so we've got a strong chapter in that development plan. Unfortunately, that is also being revised. So, you know, again, there will be a struggle around how much attention to pay to environmental issues. Tasneem then ran a project called the Social Partner Dialogue for a Just Transition. And that was, that sort of finished in 2019. And I just want to say that, so when this concept of a just transition came to South Africa, the first entity that really put something on the table was COSATU, which is our biggest trade union federation. And they said, you know, a just transition provides the opportunity for deeper transformation that includes the redistribution of power and resources towards a more just and equitable social order. So a very, you know, a vision for deep transformation. We can fiddle with the current economy and not have that deep transformation. So I think that is important. What the project that Tasneem ran arrived at was, again, a sort of vision of the future. And what was good is that this project put the issues on the table. It said the issues that people care about is that we have affordable energy, and that it's renewable, that water resources are equitably accessed, so energy, water, that there is inclusive and sustainable land use for all. So one of the points in Janus's input was about the spatial dimension. So land use came through strongly there. And then the high value we place on healthy ecosystems, land, water, and air underpins our future. So, understanding that ecosystems provide all these services. So that was the National Planning Commission initiative. Then came the establishment of the Presidential Climate Commission. And this was a resolution of a social partner summit called the Jobs Summit. So those four, labor, civil society, government, and business were all in that summit negotiating together, and they resolved to establish something like the Presidential Climate Commission. For the first year, the first term of office where I served on the commission, there was not a legal basis for the commission beyond that resolution and the fact that the presidency then adopted and implemented the resolution. And so there was almost more room for that commission to be having impact in the real economy. Now there's a Climate Change Act which has formalized the commission, but it reduces the commission to an advisory body. And so you can see, this is perpetually contested terrain. So some in government, because of vested interests in the political economy, don't want a commission that actually makes things happen. They want a commission that gives advice that they can choose to ignore or not. So, I think that that's a pity. But we'll see how, the commission navigates the second term of office. One of the first things the commission did then was to develop a just transition framework. I think, again, it was a pity that it didn't build on what was there before, because what was there before was COSATU's document. It was the work done by the National Planning Commission. There was also from civil society 2 different sort of principles documents, visioning what is a just transition. And in the commission, we sort of started from scratch and wrote a new document. But what is important about the Just Transition Framework? So I think it was a missed opportunity to take all those people along. Okay. We did run endless consultations about the Just Transition Framework and so on. So let me not pretend that, it was just, it didn't have buy-in. It does have buy-in. The issue there, the importance of this Just Transition Framework that came from the Commission is that Cabinet adopted it. So it is now a national document. So if you think about this, my thesis that, one has to build common cause, I think this is a very important moment that, in a sense, national government and through the consultation processes that the Climate Commission ran, the idea of we have to have a just transition is sort of embedded now. Of course, it means different things to different people. Of course, there's still pushback, but, I think that is a major win. Okay, then the other thing that the first deputy chair of the commission, Mr. Vali Musa, who was previously a Minister of Environment in the first democratic government. The other thing that he did to ensure that this got, what the Commission was doing got policy uptake, was in agreement with the President, all the ministers were made commissioners. So they didn't always all attend, ministers have very busy lives and need to attend to their day jobs. But in a sense, that brought to the attention of top echelon of government this whole question about climate change and the transition, which not all had in their frame before. So I thought that was an important move. It's no longer the case with the second term of office. Of course, ministers still get invited to attend the commission, but they're not de facto commissioners. The next important thing that I think happened, somewhere along this story, a very important thing happened, in that the National Business Initiative, which is a business NGO, or not NGO, it's a non-profit company that tries to bring sustainability issues to the attention of business. They ran a process on if the country had to get to net zero emissions by 2050, what would we have to do in all the different sectors of the economy? And I think that was a very important intervention. They called it just transition. It was an important intervention because it brought it to the attention of key business leaders and many businesses. It was, however, a technical intervention. It was basically, what technically do companies have to do for mitigation? It didn't really address justice. So, that's why I say that the part of justice, we have to keep it alive, and the people who will keep it alive are labor and civil society. I'm not saying there aren't people in business and government who, very much would want to see a just transition. I'm just saying you have to have your champions. Okay, then in the face of,
Louise?
countries from the developed world needing, according to what they have signed up to at the UNFCCC, need to fund the mitigation in the less developed countries, our government was getting a lot of approaches from those countries wanting to fund things in our country. And we said, wait a minute, we don't actually necessarily know what it is we should spend the money on. So a very important move was made by the presidency initiated it, to set up our Just Energy Transition Project Management Unit. And their first job was to develop something called the investment plan. What do we want? What do we need money for in order to do an energy transition? And then a second round, they developed an implementation plan, which basically the investment plan, they then consulted on that investment plan. They got a lot of feedback, and some of the feedback was, you haven't paid enough attention to municipalities, subnational levels of government, which got raised also by the previous speakers. You don't have enough money in this investment plan for the justice aspects. And all of those sorts of things have been corrected in the implementation plan. There is now also the commission, the Presidential Climate Commission, is attending to what are the investment needs for the adaptation and resilience side, not just the mitigation side, which I think is important.
Louise, one thing.
1 minute.
Yes, we almost ran out of time, so
okay.
Yes, just wanted to give you a heads up.
So I think we'll come back with recommendations. Will there be around to do recommendations, or should I do them now?
Yes, ideally, yeah, that would be a good
They'll
way
be
to go
around.
about it.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, we have got some concrete policies in this country. We have the Climate Change Act, we have the carbon tax. I think what is important is that some of like the Department of Trade and Industry is starting to pay attention to the economic shifts and putting up industrial policy around that. And I think a weakness of the JET PMU is that this is a question that really goes beyond energy. Of course, coal is the hardest part of the nut to crack. So we have to focus on that and work on that. But, you know, the IPCC research has indicated that it's going to take everybody doing everything to try and hold temperatures to, you know, restabilize at 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we have to look at the other sectors as well. And I'm pleased to hear from other countries that you're also starting to do that. Okay, thank you, Janus. I hope that was helpful.
For me, it was really helpful, very, very interesting to listen to all of you and to hear the progress or also the ups and downs of just transition implementation. That's certainly something that's also going on here a lot, that even though there can be some like good developments at some point, there's always the risk, of course, that there is backlash, and there are very strong opponents to a just transition who are profiting from the current fossil fuel world and are in the way of just transition in that sense. Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have much time for questions for now. I would like to invite you all to also reach out for questions over email and also probably to our panelists who have a lot more to share and a lot of insights along the way. I might want to also give you the opportunity to give us some feedback. You can scan this QR code and tell us how you liked the session and the expert exchange series in this edition. And thanks again to our wonderful speakers for sharing their thoughts and giving us their time. And hopefully to see you another time again. You can also personally reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions or things you would like to discuss. And otherwise, you can also reach out to our project team if you're interested in more work from our project. With that, I leave it also to everybody to say thanks in the chat. Here, Steve, thank you very much. And you also will find a follow-up of this on our Knowledge Hub, where you will also find all the materials that we shared today. Thanks again and have a good rest of the day.